Yo, what's good, people? We back. Had to come through, man. Because when we talking about ball, right? When we talking about the top all time, it does matter how old a person is, what they've seen, what they know. Of course, what they know, but how old they are, who have they seen, you know? Because I just saw that Mark Jackson. Somebody asked Mark Jackson a question. Mark Jackson, the coach, the real coach of the Warriors, the former coach of the Warriors, legendary point guard for the Knicks and Pacers and many other teams. But somebody asked him. They were like, "Yo, They said they don't have Kyrie Irving in their top 10 point guards of all times." And Mark Jackson was like, "Well, yeah, I understand that. You know what I'm saying? I don't have it. He's a great point guard, but he's not in my top. He's not in the top 10 of all times." And I wasn't mad at all. I completely understand. I completely understand Mark Jackson. Mark Jackson would be the person to know about the top point guards of all times. You know. But then when I'm looking at it and I'm doing the list of the actual top point guards of all times, you know who didn't make my list? And I said it before. You know who didn't make my list? Chris Paul. Chris Paul didn't make my list of the top 10 point guards in the NBA of all times. I'm sorry, you know what I'm saying? My list, I did not include in Bob Cousy. Sorry, Bob Cousy didn't make my list. I didn't even include Walter Clyde Frazier because those eras are before, not just before me, they're before modern basketball, before, each era of basketball, another element was added to where, so basically it's a point to the game that you have to factor. And, you know what I'm saying? Another detail to the game has been added that you have to factor in. So the top 10 point guards. I don't have them in any order, right? I don't have them in any order, but I'm gonna start with a few. I'm gonna name a few, and I'm gonna explain to you why they're on the list and Chris Paul, they're above Chris Paul, and why they're on the list and Chris Paul is not. You see, like, also when you're talking about top point guards, the rings don't matter as much as the as a scorer. So, as somebody whose primary detail is to score. So, these top point guards that I have right here. J. Kidd, his ring came, off the bench at the end of his career with that Dallas Maverick team. He did matter a lot to that team, but he wasn't the bus driver, as they say, on that team. But he definitely, played a part. And I don't think they would have won it without him. So, J. Kidd, of course. Magic Johnson, of course, that's two. Great point guard. Magic was actually a great point guard, as far as like setting up offensive, half-court offense, fast break offense. Magic, he defended a lot of point guards with his height also, People don't really talk about that part of Magic Johnson's game. It's just the fact that he was 6'9", So, Gary Payton also is ahead of Chris Paul. He's ahead of Chris Paul. Rajon Rondo, number 4, he's ahead of Chris. I put him on the top 10 point guards of all time. Before I would put him on the top 10 of all time before I put Chris Paul. I put Rajon Rondo there because as much as they praise Chris Paul for like, oh man, he's such a great point guard, Rajon Rondo seems like he's such a smarter guard on the floor. Like his basketball IQ is so much higher than Chris Paul's. I done seen Chris Paul do a lot of dumb shit. I done seen Chris Paul do a lot of dumb stuff to where it's like, yo, come on, dog. You know what I'm saying? You've been in the league how long? Like, you don't even want a ring. That's what it looked like sometimes when Chris Paul, especially in the playoffs when the pressure is on. When the pressure is on, Chris Paul is known to crumble and crack. He may not even show up. But, I'm wondering, like, now, I guess he has a chance with it now, coming off of the bench for the Warriors. But you can almost count on Chris Paul to choke. You can almost count on him to choke. He's like a guaranteed choke job. I'm just saying so far based off his career. So the next one that we got on the list is ahead of him is Isaiah Thomas, of course. Zeke. He's ahead of Chris Paul. I'd rather have him than Chris Paul. These are all the top 10 point guards I'd rather have besides Chris Paul. So let's just name that, make that the name of the list. And rather have Zeke instead of Chris Paul. I'd rather have Steph Curry instead of Chris Paul. No explanation needed. We've seen it, literally. And I'd rather have Damian Lillard than Chris Paul, because I believe Damian Lillard can play point guard more. He hasn't been required to, but you don't need to. I definitely rather have Damian Lillard rather than Chris Paul on my team. You know what I'm saying? Russell Westbrook. Give me Russell Westbrook before Chris Paul. Much as the media want to slander Russell Westbrook, all this dumb nonsense stuff, I'd rather have Russell Westbrook than Chris Paul. I know a bunch of people would too, but I'd rather have Russell Westbrook. He's guaranteed to play hard, guaranteed to show up. Chris Paul, no.